Mark Ein just confirmed something that should terrify every other player in this draw. The tournament chairman himself revealed that the overwhelming majority of ticket requests at his own event are about one single player, not the top seed, not the former champion. One rising Filipina star who wasn't even a household name a year ago. This isn't fan speculation or social media hype. This is the man who runs the entire tournament, going on record with a number that changes how you think about what's happening in Washington right now. Every tennis tournament has a hierarchy, and everyone inside that hierarchy knows exactly where they stand.
Top seeds get the prime time slots. Defending champions get the marquee court assignments. Big-name veterans get the ticket demand that keeps a tournament's box office healthy. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's how it's worked for decades at events like the Mubadala DC Open. But something unusual has been happening in Washington this year, and it's coming from a source nobody could dismiss as exaggeration or fan noise: the tournament's own chairman. Mark Ein isn't just some executive with a title. He's the man who runs the Mubadala DC Open, the person who sees the ticketing numbers before anyone else does, the person whose entire job depends on understanding exactly who is putting fans in seats. When Mark Ein says something about demand at his own event, it isn't spin. It's the closest thing to ground truth this sport has. And what he revealed in the middle of a star-studded tournament wasn't about the defending champion. It wasn't about a Grand Slam winner. It was about Alex Eala, a 21-year-old Filipina player who, 12 months earlier, wasn't even a headline name in this event's own press coverage. To understand why this stat matters so much, you have to understand the year Leylah has been quietly building. She broke into the WTA's top 40 this season, becoming the first player from the Philippines ever to do so. Before that, she'd already made history as the first Filipino to crack the WTA World Top 100, following a breakthrough run to a WTA 1000 semifinal at the 2025 Miami Open. She picked up 125-level titles in Guadalajara and Birmingham, steadily climbing a ranking system that has no room for hype, only results. Then came Wimbledon, where she beat defending champion Iga Swiatek in straight sets on center court, a result that made the tennis world sit up in a way her career hadn't quite forced before. She followed that with a dramatic comeback win over defending DC Open champion Leylah Fernandez, clawing back from a 5-1 deficit in the second set to close out a 6-2, 7-6 victory. That's the resume. That's the player who walked into Washington. And according to the man who actually runs the tournament, that's the player fans are showing up specifically to see, in numbers big enough that he felt compelled to say so publicly. The moment the story became impossible to ignore happened when Mark Ein sat down and, unprompted by any specific controversy, simply laid out what his own ticketing data was telling him. Over the last month, the ticketing team says at least 80%, if not more, of the requests in this tournament are about, "When is Alex Eala playing?" Ein said. And then, almost as an aside that made the statement even striking, he added, "Honestly, I think it's more, and they just didn't want to say it was more." Sit with that number for a second. 80% in a tournament field that includes established, ranked players with far longer resumes, far bigger sponsorship deals, and far more tournament history in Washington specifically. The overwhelming majority of fans reaching out about tickets aren't asking about any of them. They're asking about one player, a 21-year-old who's still technically young enough to be in college, playing in what is still relatively early days of what looks like a career-defining season. This is the trigger point of the entire story because it flips the usual hierarchy of tennis attention completely upside down. Normally, ticket demand follows rankings, follows Grand Slam history, follows name recognition built over a decade of tour presence. What Ein described is something different entirely, a groundswell of demand that seems to be running ahead of Eala's ranking, ahead of her trophy count, ahead of the traditional metrics that usually dictate who a tournament markets as its headline draw. And it's not as if Eala arrived in Washington with nothing to back up that demand. She'd already delivered the Swiatek upset at Wimbledon. She then went on in this very tournament to eliminate defending champion Leylah Fernandez in that dramatic second-round comeback, the kind of result that validates exactly why fans were asking about her in the first place. But here's what makes Ein's comment land so hard. He wasn't describing demand after the Fernandez win. He was describing demand building over the course of an entire month leading into the tournament, before those specific fireworks had even happened. Fans weren't just reacting to a great match. They were already anticipating one, in numbers big enough for the tournament's own ticketing team to flag it internally, and big enough for the chairman himself to bring it up publicly. That's not hype catching up to results. That's demand running ahead of them.
Once Ein's comment went public, it didn't stay contained to tennis media. It spread the way genuinely surprising numbers always do, through fan forums, through Filipino sports coverage, through casual tennis conversation that suddenly had a concrete statistic to point to instead of just a vibe. For the Filipino tennis community specifically, this wasn't just a fun stat. It was validation of something they'd been feeling for months, but hadn't seen confirmed by anyone inside tournament operations. Eala's rise has been a genuinely emotional story in the Philippines, a country that had never had a player break into the WTA's top 100, let alone the top 40, let alone reach a WTA 1000 semifinal. When Washington's own tournament crowd showed up in visible, vocal force to support both Eala and Fernandez during their Filipino-flavored round of 16 matchup, that energy was already obvious from the stands. Ein's comment simply put a hard number behind what everyone watching could already feel. Reaction from neutral tennis observers took a slightly different shape, more surprise, more recalibration of expectations. An 80% ticket request share for a player who isn't even the top seed, isn't the defending champion, and hasn't yet won a WTA Tour-level singles title is not a normal statistic in this sport. It's the kind of number that gets attached to established superstars, not to a player still chasing her first tour-level trophy. And then there's the layer of validation that came from the players themselves. Leylah Fernandez, after being eliminated by Eala in that dramatic second-round comeback, didn't hesitate to praise her conqueror in terms that only reinforced Ein's ticketing numbers. She's a tough player. She's playing with a lot of confidence. She's trusting herself. She's always in the match, whether she's down or whether she's up. Coming from a former US Open finalist and the tournament's own defending champion, that's not a courtesy quote. It's an acknowledgement from inside the locker room of exactly why fans might be lining up to watch this specific player. Eala herself, when asked about the wave of support she was receiving from the Washington crowd, deflected the attention in a way that only deepened the connection fans felt toward her. She said, "I think the question should be rephrased. It's what it's like to be Filipino," crediting the community rather than herself for the atmosphere surrounding her matches. Put all of that together, a chairman's ticketing stat, a defending champion's public praise, a player who keeps redirecting credit to her fan base, and you get a story that escalated fast, not because of controversy, but because of how rare and specific the underlying number actually was.
Whenever a number this striking gets attached to a rising player, scrutiny inevitably follows, and this story was no exception. The obvious skeptical question: is an 80% ticket request share actually meaningful, or is it a soft, easily inflated stat that sounds more dramatic than it really is? Ticket request data isn't the same as verified ticket sales. It reflects what fans are asking about: emails, calls, inquiries to a ticketing office, rather than a hard, audited breakdown of who's actually walking through the gates. Critics pointed out that Ein's own framing left room for interpretation, especially his admission that the real number might be more than 80%, without a harder figure to back that up. There's also the broader question of sustainability. Ticket demand tied to a hot month of results can spike and fade quickly in tennis, a sport where form is notoriously streaky, and a single tough loss can shift a narrative overnight. Eala herself has had rough patches, even during this breakout stretch: a first-round exit at the Qatar Total Energies Open earlier in the season, and a shoulder injury that limited her to just a couple of tour-level events during one stretch of the year. Skeptics were quick to note that demand built on a hot streak isn't the same as demand built on a fully established career, and that the real test will be whether this level of ticket interest holds up across a full season, not just a headline-grabbing month. And then there's the more uncomfortable layer of the conversation. What does an 80% figure say about the other players in this draw? A tournament chairman publicly stating that the overwhelming majority of interest centers on one player in a field that includes ranked veterans and past champions isn't just a compliment to Eala. It's an implicit statement about where the rest of the field currently stands in terms of drawing power, whether Ein intended it that way or not. None of this scrutiny erased the underlying story, though. If anything, it sharpened it. Because even accounting for the soft nature of ticket request data, even accounting for the fact that hot streaks fade, the fact remains: the person with the clearest, most direct view into that tournament's actual demand chose to describe it using a specific, striking number, and chose to say so publicly, unprompted, about a player who is still chasing her first WTA Tour-level title. So, what's the honest read on what Mark Ein's comment actually tells us? It doesn't mean Alex Eala is already the best player in this field on paper. Her ranking, while rapidly rising, still sits behind plenty of the seeded players in that draw. It doesn't mean her form is guaranteed to hold. She's shown, even this season, that she's capable of first-round exits and inconsistent stretches, like any player still building consistency at the highest level. What it does mean is something arguably more interesting than a simple ranking milestone. Eala has become a genuine box office draw, ahead of where her ranking or trophy count alone would predict. That's a different and, in some ways, rarer kind of validation. Rankings measure results against a strict, objective points system. Ticket demand measures something more human: whether fans are willing to organize their schedules, spend their money, and show up specifically because of one player's presence on the court. And the timing of Ein's comment matters here too. This wasn't a reaction to the Fernandez win. This was a chairman describing a full month of ticketing behavior, demand that had been building before Eala delivered her most dramatic result of the tournament. That suggests something beyond a single hot week of headlines. It suggests a fan base that had already made up its mind about this player, based on everything that came before Washington: the Swiatek upset, the steady ranking climb, the history-making milestones for Filipino tennis. Fernandez's own comments only reinforce that reading. A defending champion, freshly eliminated, publicly crediting her opponent's mental toughness isn't the kind of thing players say to be polite. It's the kind of thing said when the result genuinely surprised them, and when the player responsible has clearly earned a level of respect that goes beyond one match. The resolution here isn't a tidy, fully proven verdict. It's an emerging picture: a tournament chairman's real ticketing data, a beaten champion's genuine praise, and a rising player's own humility about redirecting credit to her community, all pointing in the same direction. Something has shifted in how fans engage with this player, and it happened faster than her ranking climb alone would suggest.